Well, hello everybody. Once my screen gets here loaded, we're going to be finishing up our last segment on the histology unit. So this is section 4 of the notes, and let's go ahead and get busy. Your essential question for today, listen closely, is going to be, how do muscle tissue and nervous tissue communicate? Okay, you may have to think a little bit hard on this one, but I think you're going to figure this out. Okay, so our first section we're going to talk about is muscle tissue. There are 3 types of muscle tissue, and we all know that the major function of muscle tissue is movement and applying force. So let's get going here. All right, the first type of muscle tissue we have is cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle composes your heart wall. So the outside of your heart is really thick, meaty. It's made up of cardiac muscle tissue. It functions in pumping blood to all of the body parts and is held together with these intercalated discs. That's what holds these things together. And also they contain these gap junctions, which for communication, and desmosomes, the anchors. These desmosomes are the things that lock the cardiac muscle fibers together so that the force of your heartbeat doesn't cause your heart to explode. And the gap junctions, they enable the communication between other cells, such as nervous tissue. Let me go back here for a second. Okay, let's look at these cardiac muscle fibers. Cardiac muscle is striated, means it has stripes that are perpendicular to the fibers themselves. And then in the microscopic view, you can see these intercalated discs that hold those cardiac muscle fibers together. And there you can see the nuclei of them as well. Okay, now skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is attached to bones by tendons. It functions in your body movements, posture, holds you up straight and keeps you upright and moving and being able to walk on 2 feet or 2 legs. And also, your skeletal muscle tissue is responsible for thermogenesis. So thermo, meaning heat, genesis, to generate or create. So heat creation. Your skeletal muscle fibers, as they move back and forth, they have friction, and they help your body to heat up. So that's the reason why when you get the shivers, your jaw clenches and shakes, your back clenches and shakes, it's to heat you up because you've gotten colder. It's a homeostatic mechanism. Now, skeletal muscle tissue is the only muscle tissue that is controlled voluntarily, meaning you think about it. You don't think about your heart beating. You don't think about your food moving down as you swallow. But in skeletal muscle, your brain is consciously engaged with how you move. So me moving my hands while I'm talking, my mouth moving while I'm talking is a skeletal muscle tissue, and it's controlled voluntarily by my conscious brain. Okay, looking at these microscopic images of the skeletal muscle tissue, we see that it is striated or striped, and skeletal muscle fibers have a lot of nuclei. They're multinucleated. And on to smooth muscle tissue. Smooth muscle tissue forms the walls of a lot of our internal organs. For example, the stomach, our gastrointestinal tract, so esophagus, stomach, intestines. Ladies, the uterus is made up of smooth muscle tissue, and everybody, the anus is made up of smooth muscle tissue as well. It functions in motion of the internal organs. So your internal organs, they do move. They have purposes and functions. If we go back to the digestive system or the gastrointestinal tract, its responsibility is to squeeze and move food down through it. So in different parts of it, it can absorb things, it can break down things, and so on. All right. If we take a look at this smooth muscle tissue, this is a drawing of a microscopic view. Notice how the muscle fibers are smooth. They're not striped. So that's what makes smooth muscle tissue. And they're not as organized as skeletal muscle. And they do fit together, and they bond together, and they communicate with each other. But they have different cell junctions. And this is what smooth muscle tissue would look like under a microscope, magnified up to 600 times. So our microscopes aren't as powerful as that, but we can see some similarities a little bit smaller. Okay, so smooth muscle tissue. All right, so nervous tissue, our last slide for today. Nervous tissue is made up of neurons and neuroglia. So neurons are the ones that we're going to focus on mostly here in this segment. The neuroglia, we will talk about those when we get to the nervous system much later in the year. All right, so what a neuron does is it converts a stimulus response to an action potential. So what this means is it takes some kind of stimulus and it communicates it, okay? It sends it on through to another cell. It could be another neuron, it could be a muscle cell, it could be some other action kind of cell. Most of the time it's a muscle cell if it's an action involved. Or glandular tissue. It could be. It just depends. All right, so the neurons that we have in our bodies could be one of three types. The sensory neurons, those are the ones that are receiving the information and passing it along. Motor neurons, those are the ones that are receiving some orders from the brain to do something. And interneurons, those are the ones that are in between other neurons, okay? And those are the ones that are up here in our brains. And these are really, really important in order for us to be able to think and do and have emotions and hear and see and remember. Those are really important. So a neuron has these dendrites. Dendrites receive the action potential. They receive the stimulus coming from another cell. Then you've got the cell body, and then axons. These are the ones that are connecting to other cells. Okay, those are the ones that are communicating with other cells at the end of them. All right. So, hey, those are our notes for today. Wasn't too bad. Muscle tissue and nervous tissue. Three types of muscle tissue, one specific type of neuron, nerve cell, and then we'll talk about the accessory cells, those neuroglia, later. And they do communicate because they have those cell junctions, those gap junctions in particular, and they're responsible for what we do and how we do it. All right. Have a great day. Enjoy your activity.